Without any further ado, coming to tonight's session on Be Brave, Get Data, it's time to pivot. Let me give an introduction to our acclaimed and admired speaker of tonight, Beata Kupiec. Beata is a non-tech person in a tech world. She is a classical philologist by degree with over 10 years of experience as a product manager in IT. She is passionate about history and architecture of ancient Greece and Rome, the same way as about data, product discovery, and jobs to be done. She loves sharing knowledge, organizing product talks in Krakow, and gives lectures on user experience and product design at AGH University of Science and Technology in Krakow, Poland. A very warm welcome to you, Beata. We are thrilled to have you here with us tonight. Handing the session over to you now.
Thank you very much, Shama, and thank you very much to the Institute of Product Leadership for having me here tonight for you this evening, for me this afternoon. Let me share my screen then. And there we go. I hope the presentation is live right now.
Yes, Beata, we can see the presentation.
Great, thank you. Hello, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon. And I'm sending you hello from Krakow, from Poland. We will be talking today about pivoting in product management. And I would like to share with you a little bit of my experience, how I did pivoting before in my life, and what does pivoting actually mean? What do we need to pivot? How we should do that? And why is it important? As Shama introduced me, and thank you very much, my name is Beata Kupiec, and by degree, I am the master, hold on, oh, there you go. By degree, I am the master of classical philology. And yes, this is my passion. I studied ancient history and culture and architecture of ancient Greece and Rome. And that became one of my passions. My other passions are cooking, gardening, and drawing, as you can see. Actually, I think drawing is really a cool thing in IT because it really connects tech and non-tech people, and using drawing, you can explain a lot of things around product management and agile product design, so whatever your needs are. Because sharing is caring, I do a lot of stuff around product management. So I organize product tanks in Krakow. I write different blogs. I'm sharing my knowledge around product management on different conferences. And that is great for me because I not only can share my experience, but I can learn a lot from people who are doing the same, who are building products and designing them. For the last 10 years, I've been working as a product manager, and that became my passion as well. Now, when you hear product management, you actually connotate this with priorities, customers, feedback, roadmap, user experience, revenue, a lot of stuff. Also with having fun, drinking coffee with a team, having breakfast. There is one word that is also connotated with product management, and probably all of you are guessing right now what this word is, and it's pivot, right? It's pivot. Pivot is important in product management, and I will tell you why. Now, when you Google the meaning of the word pivot, you will find that it means to turn or rotate, like a basketball player is pivoting back and forth on one foot to protect the ball, right? They do that very quickly. We're watching them. You know, they do that very quickly, but actually, even in basketball, they have a tactic and a strategy for the game. So they spend some time analyzing data. They spend some time preparing themselves, like how to play. Now, there is also another pivot, and I think it's one of the most famous pivots in the world. And this is this one. And I'm pretty sure everybody who is a Friends fan, as I am, has already seen this scene where Ross tried to put his couch up to his apartment. Now, looking at this scene, you can see how challenging it is really to do the pivot. So let's talk about this today. Like, is it challenging? Should we do that? And why should we do that? Before we go, to the presentation, and before I will talk about my experience, I'd like you guys, and I like the guys that are on Zoom, to vote on this question. So there's a question to you: what actually pivoting in product management means to you? Is it changing the vision and the strategy? Or is it sunset the product and start a new one? Or is it improving strategy to grow the business? So let's take some time, whoever is on Zoom, and please vote. What does it mean for you? I can see some people already clicking, which is great. Improving strategy to grow business, that wins. Changing the vision and the strategy, is anybody else thinking like that? Improving strategy to grow the business is the winner. Cool. So the winner is improving strategy to grow business. That's cool. Thank you very much. And that is true. Let's talk about this. Like, what does it really mean in the product management? So let's close the voting and move further. So what is a pivot in product management? You vote for the strategy, changing the strategy. Yes, pivot is a change in the strategy without a change in the vision. This is what pivot in product management means. When we talk about product vision, we talk about the big picture, the why we're building the product, what problems we intend to solve, for what customers, why we're working on the solution, on the offering, and what we would like to achieve, where we would like to be in the future with whatever we're building for our customers. So this is like a really big picture about why we're doing what we're doing. Now, the product strategy is the what. So what we have to do, what goals we have to achieve, and how we have to achieve them to make the vision happen. The strategy is a direction to the vision, and the strategy is like a road that is bringing us to making the vision happen. Now, people pivot all the time. You know, people change jobs, people change different cities and countries. They move from one to the other. Students sometimes change the studies. After a year, they decide this is not for me. So they are pivoting in their life a lot. For example, my kids actually, I have a teenage 16 years old daughter, and she also pivoted last year in September or October on her subjects, because she said after 1 month, that's not for me. I want to do something different. People pivot a lot. However, a lot of people have vision, like what we would like to do in my life. Like, what is my life about? Like, what is my big picture of my life? For example, people say, I want to take care of the animals, right? And to take care of the animals, I can work as a vet, or I can go to different missions to different countries to rescue the wild animals, for example. When I was in high school, I had a vision that I want to work with people and for people. Of course, I didn't know it's called vision at the time. And I didn't know it's going to be called strategy, what I will be doing in my life. But I had some strategy. So I decided what to do to work with people and for people. So I decided to become an actress. I spent 2 years preparing myself and to go to the acting school. It was over 20 years ago. And fortunately for Poland, at that time, Poland left the communistic bloc, and people were free, and people started traveling, and people in Poland started opening different businesses, and they started going abroad and going to the shopping centers that were built in Poland. And nobody actually took care about the theaters and the cinemas. They didn't care about the culture a lot. So a lot of actors actually lost their jobs. And for me, it was the moment when I said, okay, I spent 2 years preparing myself, but I don't think I want to do that. So I chose to be a teacher. I didn't throw away what I actually learned when I was preparing myself to be an actress, because, you know, I could stand in front of the students, and I could talk to them very loudly, and I could articulate words correctly to them. So I really benefit from my preparation to the acting school. But after some time, I decided, well, teaching is not what I want to do. So I pivoted again, and I pivoted again, and I pivoted again in my life, and I'm here today. I'm the product manager, and I'm still having the same vision. I'm building products with people and for people. So if people can pivot, and a lot of people can pivot in their life, I think we product managers, we can do that as well. Now, we are born to ask questions, right? We're asking questions, why and when and how much and for whom. And there is also one question that we should be asking every single day, which is when to change the direction. If you hear pivot, I think a lot of people connotate pivoting with startups and shifting to the new strategy, right? A lot of startups are doing pivots and they are shifting to the new strategy. However, pivoting in product management is also possible in bigger corporations, not only startups. You don't have to pivot on the entire strategy. You can pivot on part of this strategy, or you can pivot on some components of your work, like technology, for example. If you want to use more innovative technology or more efficient technology, you can pivot on technology. You can pivot on customer segments. You see that the customer segment that you're targeting with your offering is not the right one, or maybe you're targeting 3 customer segments and one of them is really performing well and better than the others. Let's pivot on them. Pivot on feature, pivot or hypothesis. Validating hypothesis is not a never-ending story, right? So you have limited budget and time and people to do some validation. And if at some point you see that your results are not giving you what you need, are not solving the problems that you're trying to solve, it's time to pivot. So if you ask when it's the time to change the direction, the answer and the golden rule is the earlier you pivot, the more chances you have to succeed. So do that the moment you think it's time for pivoting. Now, why you need to pivot? Because market changes, right? You're gathering different data, you're doing market research, competitive analysis, and you see that your offering doesn't fit the market anymore or is losing this fit, right? So you have a lot of data to say market changes. We need to change our direction. We need to change our strategy with our vision, because we need to find a new way to the market fit. Now, it's great if you have time for that. It's great if you have time to gather this data and do this analysis. Imagine what happened last year. We are still in the pandemic times. Many people last year, many entrepreneurs, business owners, they didn't have time to gather data and think. They were just forced to do pivot. In Poland, we still have closed restaurants. They're not open. Now, restaurant owners have a vision of feeding people with a good and the best food ever. They want to make people happy with the food that they cook for them and serve to them. Last year, they were closed just over the night. They didn't have time to think about market. They didn't have time to think about market changes, because markets changed suddenly. And it was for them the question of to be or not to be. If we don't pivot, we will lose our business. So many of them started delivery service. Many of them started takeaway service, what they didn't offer before, because many of restaurants don't do that, right? People just come, eat, and go. For them, being or losing the market was either pivoting on the current services or going bankrupt. So when market changes, we need to pivot. And I really hope we all have time to gather data. We are not forced to that. Sometimes if you're forced, you don't have time, but you have to do that. Now, why you need to pivot? Because of feedback. If you listen to your customers and you're gathering feedback from them from different places, right? You can use different channels to gather feedback. It's your support team. It's different surveys that you're getting from customers. It's a lot of analytical tools that are running behind your product. Now, if you gather feedback from your customers that the offering doesn't solve their needs and their problems, then you have to pivot. Now, of course, it's not only about listening to the customers. You also have to observe them. As Steve Jobs said, it's not the customer's job to know what they want. So it's our job to know what they want. And they sometimes don't know. But imagine that even if you're targeting customers, one customer segment, people are different. They have different tastes. They have different habits. So you need to also observe them and look at their reaction when they are using your product. Like, for example, when I started my career as a product manager, one of my first products, it was the application where the customers who were buying flights and booking flights and buying tickets, they could use this application to print or download the ticket or the invoice if they needed that, for example, for their finance teams because they were traveling business. So I inherited product where customer could log in, print and download ticket on the desktop, but they couldn't do that on the mobile. On the mobile, they had access to the documents. However, for some reason, the previous product manager decided to provide them the documents in a very fancy HTML version, so they could scroll through those documents. A lot of data was there, but they couldn't do anything with them. They couldn't download that. They couldn't print the documents. So I looked through the data coming from our support. There were a lot of tickets saying that customers are complaining, why are we able to print the documents from the desktop? We're not able to do that from the mobile. So I was like, wow, that's a good point, right? We have this possibility on the desktop, not on the mobile. Then I talked to my team, to my engineers team, which is also a great source of feedback. And my team said, like, yeah, and we have to actually support two places because we have different documents on the desktop and different on the mobile. And like, it's not cost effective if we have to develop some changes, if we have to improve the performance or the look and feel, we have to do that in two places. So gathering the data from the customers and having the data and the feedback from the engineering teams, I decided to pivot on this solution. And I sunset the documents on the mobile in the HTML version, and we provided the documents, the same documents that they have on the desktop, and they were able also to print and download. And also you need to pivot when the hypothesis validation phase, right? So as I said, if you're doing the validation for a long time and you're seeing that's not the right direction, we're not getting the results that we should, it's not solving the problem, that's the time to pivot. The most important thing is that when you pivot, and why you need to pivot is because you want to improve the strategy that is going to help you to grow the business, to expand the business, and to bring it to the next level. So that is the main reason why you should pivot on whatever you're building. Before you start pivot, there is one question you have to answer. The question is, can this problem be solved with more research or more testing or more time or more money? If the answer to this question is no, then the answer to question when I should change the direction is now. Now it's the time to do that. How to start it? So you answered the question was answered, and you know that you cannot spend more time, you cannot spend more resources, you don't have money for further experimenting or actually for further improving your product. So how to start this? Make sure you are prepared well. Of course, we're assuming that you have time to prepare, to pivot. You're not forced to do that, but make sure you're prepared well. By preparing well, I mean gather the data. Gather data that you need to gather to make a real and valid statement why and what is the reason of pivoting. Customer data, usability data, market research, competitive analysis, the data coming from your teams, costs of development, everything that actually helps you to decide on the pivot. Now think what kind of pivot it is. Is it changing entire strategy? Is it maybe changing part of this? Is it changing more or hypothesis validation, or maybe technology? Set new goals, which is important because you will be in your new strategy, you will be achieving new goals. So you have to set the new goals, and then you have to communicate it. Communicate it broadly to get buy-in from the teams that you're going to work with and the people who will be investing into your future work and future strategy. Of course, be ready for questions. Identify the stakeholders, get into their shoes and think like what questions they will be asking you. So you are prepared to answer those questions, right? If you don't know the answer to the question, that's not a problem. You can always follow up with the answer. But think up front, like what questions can be asked when you come and start communicate the need for change. And then if you get the green light, start experimenting and be ready for more. If it's your first pivot, it's not the last one. If it's like your fifth pivot, you know it's not the last one. It's going to be more because pivoting is about experimenting. It's about doing changes and learning from them. So be prepared for more than one pivot, whatever changes you're planning to do. What are the types of pivots? You can pivot on the feature. It's called zoom in, zoom out. So you can take a feature and make the product out of this, or you can take a product and make a feature out of this, make it as a part of the bigger portfolio, for example. Like Flickr and Instagram, those two. Flickr was in the past online gaming application, and Instagram was about, I think was called Bourbon, and it was about checking yourself whenever you were traveling. Wherever you are, check yourself, show people where you are. Show people, because both of them had a feature that is about uploading pictures and photos. Today, we know what they're doing. They turned those features into the product. Now you can pivot on technology, as I said before, right? Because you want to look for the technology that is more innovative, or the technology that is more cost effective, or the technology that is the most efficient for the solution that you're building. You can pivot on platform, changing the platform into application or changing the application into the platform, depending on what your needs are. You can pivot on the customer segment, right? As I mentioned, if you're targeting one customer segment, and that's after some research and after the results that you're getting, the revenue that you're getting, you see, actually this customer segment is not performing well, it's time to pivot. If you're targeting 2 or 3 customer segments and you see that one of them is really performing much, much better than the others, it's also time to think, should we invest into the others at this moment? Maybe we should pivot our solution only to the best performing one. There is McDonald's story. Their marketing team many years ago decided on launching new product, which is a milkshake. And their marketing team thought that, oh, the milkshake, the customer segment is actually family with kids, because the milkshake will be purchased by family with kids. They will come to McDonald's over the weekends. Maybe some of them will go to the church over the weekend, and after the church, they will come to McDonald's, and they will all be buying milkshakes. So they launched milkshakes, introduced a new product, marketed it well to the targeted customer segments of families and kids. And after some time, they noticed that the revenue is actually not hitting the targets that they planned. So something was not okay there, right? Yeah. So they decided to hire the research teams, and the research team did some research, and they found out that milkshakes are purchased mostly in the mornings, not over the weekends, And they are purchased not by family with kids, but they are purchased by drivers, people who are driving to work. And they asked questions to those people, and the people said like, the driver said like, that's great to have this kind of milkshake, because I'm driving to work, it takes me 30 minutes, 40 minutes, it's a long drive. So if I eat banana, it's like 30 seconds, banana is gone. Then if I eat donuts, then okay, 1 minute, donuts are gone. The thing is that I have sticky hand then after the donuts, right? Milkshake is perfect because it's in a cup, it's closed, you have a straw, you can put it into the holder, and you can sip it like for 40 minutes when you're driving. So after this research, McDonald's decided to pivot on the customer segment. They also decided to make the milkshakes thicker, so you can sip, longer. And they pivoted on the customer segment and marketed the milkshakes for the drivers, which actually is also the story where marketing shouldn't be building products. It's us product people, right? But that's the completely different story. You can pivot on the channel as well, right? If you decide that the distribution channel of your product is not the right one or is not performing as you expected, change it. Gather data, change it. Customer need. As I said, if your solution or if your hypothesis are not solving the problems and are not answering and addressing customer needs, change it. When I worked as a product manager for TripCase, it was the application for managing the trips. So that was a mobile application. Customers, actually travelers, it was dedicated to business and leisure travelers. If you have a trip, if you have a flight, or if you rent a car, or you have a hotel booked, you could create a trip in TripCase and you could manage this trip. So our vision was that we want to make the traveler's life easier, better, smoother, with all the information that they need during the trip. At that time, because we had two segments of the customers, leisure and business, at that time, the strategy that we had was built around business travelers. And one of my hypotheses was that business travelers, when they book a flight, they are business people, they change the flights often because, business is dynamic, so their trips are changing. My hypothesis was that if we allow them to rebook the flight in the application, we will increase the engagement and customer satisfaction by this feature. So my team and I, we spent some time, my team, I mean my engineers and UX designer, we spent some time on building prototypes, on POCing, because the team had to POC, do the proof of concepts on the services that are going to support the backend information. So we spent some time on prototyping and POCing, and we built the prototype. So our journey for the business traveler was they log into the application because they want their need is to change the flight. So they're logging into the application, they hit the rebook button, they provide the dates, and we will be able to display them a bunch of flights, new flights for this date, different connections, different airlines. Then they will be able to choose the flight. If there is any rebooking fee, they need to provide the credit card number, pay for this rebooking, and they will be saving this information, and we will do the magic behind the scenes to rebook the flights for them. Cool, there is a POC done, prototype built. I started validating this hypothesis with sample business travelers, also using people at my company, because there were also business travelers using the application. And after some validation sessions, it occurred that business travelers were like, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's great, but I don't think I would use it. It's like, okay. Would you like to rebook the flight via this application? Yeah, that would be cool to rebook this flight, right? But you know what? I'm the business people, so I'm doing business. So I don't have time really to spend it on looking for the flights. What is the connection? If I know that I need to, for example, prolong my business trip and I need to come back next week, I don't have time really to look for the flights. I just want to have the flight booked and come back. And I said, okay, so how are you doing that today? Well, I'm just calling my agency and I'm just letting them know what the date they should book the new flight for. And they're just coming back to me with some itinerary proposals. And I say, okay, this one, and they just do it for me. If I have to pay, there is a profile created on the agency side. So they have everything, the corporate card, credit card, and everything is there. So it's really, they don't bother me at all. Oh, okay. So I said, so you would like to still rebook the flight via the application. Why? Well, that would be great because if I'm in the meeting and I need to rebook my flight, I don't have chance or possibility right now to call my agency. So maybe I can just send them the information, like inform them that's the flight I want to rebook. I have many flights, so it would be easy to tell them like, this is the flight I want to rebook. So after validating this hypothesis and talking to different customers, we came with the solution that with a new user journey, what was needed for the business traveler was hit the rebook button, provide the date for the new flight, and send it to the agency, right? And they will know what to do. They will know what to do because they have a profile. They know actually if the traveler is a member and has a gold card for any particular airlines. They know them because they are traveling very often, so they know their preferred connections and so on and so on. This is all what they needed to do. It's fast, it's easy. They don't have to bother about the entire story. So based on this, on those results, we decided to pivot on the solution. However, my team was like, oh, well, we spent so much time building this prototype and POCing on the solution, how to get all the flights and how to get the data related to payment. And I said, guys, that's not a lost effort. We're going to use this effort whenever we focus on our leisure travelers, right? Because they have different needs. They don't want to rebook flights every single week because they are traveling leisure. Maybe they will be interested in using our application to book the flight. So we have entire flow ready. So that's not a lost work. We definitely reuse it in the future. Now, you can pivot also on the business model, which is really, I think, the biggest one and the hardest one, because pivoting on the business model is really a lot of work and it's huge. But if there is a need to do that and you have enough data to do that, or there is a sudden need to do that, do it. Like Twitter, they had a very, very big need many, many years ago to change the business model because Twitter started as an application, like podcasting application, where you could record whatever you wanted on the MP4, then upload this to the application, and everybody was listening to that. Now, at some point, Apple, out of nowhere, introduced iTunes, and Twitter was done. So, leadership of Twitter, I think they were called Audio at that time, they came to everybody in the company and said, all hands on board, let's make sure we find a solution, like how to make our vision happen with a completely new strategy, because we cannot compete with Apple right now. We have Twitter today. So they came with the solutions, what to do, and we have Twitter today. There was also a case in TripCase when I was working as a product manager there that we have different business models actually over like a couple of years, which was really fun because we were adjusting them based on the data and needs. But one of our business models was built around our users. If you build the application, if you build the product, the solution, you always need people to use it. You need people to use it. You need people to pay for that, right? You need users. So our business model was built around the users for a long time, and around the acquisition. And the acquisition went up and up and up like 1 year, second year, year over year, at some point we noticed that we're not getting as many users as we used to. So, the pace of growth is not so big. However, number of trips in the application is growing, right? Because it occurred that one user in the application, they can have like 10 trips a year in the application, because they were, for example, business travelers. Business travelers could have even more trips. And for us, it was not only about flights. As I said, it was about trips. So the accommodation, the car rentals. It was also about attractions and meetings and different areas they wanted to visit. So because our vision was to make the trip smoother and better and easier and funnier for our travelers, we decided at some point, looking at the data, looking at the amount of trips versus amount of users, and the complexity of the trips, and then the diversity of the trips, we decided to change this business model. It was, of course, something that didn't happen over the night, but after analysis, data and metrics, we decided to do that. So now, how to communicate the pivot? So as I said, gathering data is the most important thing. You need to have metrics, you need to have data, because this is what is making your story, why you want to do that. If you have this data gathered, then you talk to your product team, people you're working with, because that's the first, I would say, people segment that you should address, because you need to have them on board. Imagine that you're going to change the strategy, or you're going to change the offering, the product. With people, you will be still working with people who spent time, sometimes years, on building this product. It's their baby, right? Your engineering team, your user research team, user design team, those are people you need to make sure are on board with your changes, and you convince them with the data that you have why you want to do that. Now, of course, the other people segment, I would say, like customer segment, is the leadership. You need to define right stakeholders and find the people who actually are going to give you the green light and pay for the new experiment, for the new strategy. Product team, they're giving you their time, their energy, themselves to do that. Leadership is giving you money to do that. Imagine that they have a vision, right? So you are going to convince them about the new strategy, how to make this vision happen. So you need to identify proper people and communicate to them as well. Now, if you have data and if you have people defined, then be brave and be honest. Be brave and tell them that that's the data, that's what data is saying, and this is why you think you want to change the direction. Now, be honest, and if there was a failure in launching the new offer or validating the hypothesis, be honest and tell that, like, say it out loud. We product people, our life is not life full of roses. It's life full of failures. But that's why we're actually delivering great products, because we are experimenting a lot, and experimenting means failing. You cannot expect that your first experiment is going to be like a very, very great success. So be brave and tell them as well that even the biggest ones, they were not brave enough to change the direction, and they failed. Like Kodak failed because one of the engineers, I think, or somebody who was working there, told them, the leadership, that they should go into the digital solutions. They said, no, that's not what we want to invest into. Netflix, they came to Blockbuster, that was the biggest company renting home games and home videos. And Netflix offered themselves to sell themselves to Blockbuster, right? Buy us, we are here, you can buy us. And the CEO of the Blockbuster said, no, you're actually addressing like a niche business. Well, Blockbuster is probably not existing anymore, and Netflix is $25 billion company today. So if you're brave enough and tell them like, this is the data, this is why we should do that, and this is how I see it, then be honest also what was not quite okay and try to get them on board. Now, show them what is the current state, right? Definitely showing them what is the current state, what are the pros and cons. There's not that current state is always bad, right? Definitely there are pluses and minuses of the current solution. Make sure you tell everybody that you're not throwing away what you currently have. Like maybe if you have a results of your hypothesis, then you're not throwing that away because you can reuse it later. Maybe you have the prototype in place that you can reuse in the future. So as much as you can reuse your current work, just communicate that. And then communicate what is the future solution and what is the future strategy and what are the new goals and what is the plan to achieve them. And also show them the pros and cons. Don't try to sell them the story that the future strategy and the future solution is going to be the best one, errorless, defectless, everything is going to be fine. As I told you before, it's the pivot. It's maybe the first one, but not the last one. So if you're presenting current and future offering, current strategy versus future strategy, make sure you sell it to your leadership, showing the pluses and minuses of both. Where are the risks and how you're going to mitigate the risks? What are the costs and how are you going to reduce the costs? So whatever you have on your plate, make sure it's compared. And then at the end, your story has to give them has to convince them that they know why you want to do the pivot, why you want to change the strategy, why you want to change the offering, and what are the benefits for them. Not only for them as a company, but also for the users. Not only for the users, but also for them as a company, right? At the end, everybody wants to build products and earn money on those products. So make sure they understand why you're doing that and what are the benefits of the new solution. And the benefits of the new solution must be higher and bigger than the benefits of the current one. Your leaders should be convinced that you're changing the strategy, not the vision. They are people. In the startups, usually they are the owners of the startups. They are the people who are building the vision. So you're not changing their vision. You're not changing their dream. You're changing the way how to make this vision happen. So make sure they understand that. And also make sure they understand that only improved strategy is going to expand their business, grow their business. And this new strategy, this new offer, this new technology, this new feature, whatever you're building, whatever you're pivoting on, is going to bring the business to the next level. So I wish you all, not only you, but myself as well as a product manager, that we always have time to gather data and we always have enough data to make decisions on pivots. I wish you know what type of pivots you're doing, right? Make sure that you perfectly understand, are you changing the entire strategy or are you changing maybe part of this? I wish all of us supportive product teams and leaders. Somebody said once that it's easy to change technology. It's much more difficult to change mindset. So it's good to have supportive people working with you because you're building products with people and for people. So if you have a support from the teams you're working and the leaders that are giving you the green light, there's a huge win already, even before you start pivoting. Now, of course, be honest, right? If it's a failure, it's a failure. Those are the results. They are not very good for us. We need to change them. And be ready for more. Pivoting is experimenting. So there will be more and more. And be brave. Tell people the truth. Show people data. Show people examples of others who didn't want to do that, or maybe they didn't have enough courage to do that. Be brave and take the pivot. Because pivot is not a failure. It's a new way to achieve the goal that is going to help you to fulfill the vision. So everybody who's working with products, who's working with solutions for the customers, should be brave enough, should get data, because it might be the time to pivot, maybe right now. Who knows? Thank you very much.
Thank you for delivering a brilliant session, Beata. Really great insights. And we already have questions lined up for you. So let's begin with the Q&A session. Give me a moment to share my screen. Audience, please go ahead and ask your questions in the Zoom Q&A window or on the LinkedIn thread. Let's begin this discussion with Beata on the Q&A session. But before that, a quick reminder to the audience. Audience, please share your feedback and let us know your experience and learnings from the webinars hosted by the Institute. So you can check out the link in the chat window. Please take the time to go through it and let us know your feedback. And it will help us plan and deliver many such insightful webinars in the future. Having said that, let's take this first question by Manoj. How best to overcome the challenges faced within product development roadmap to evolve for competitive advantage within current VUCA climate? It's in the chat section, Beata, if you can see.
Yes, I can see that.
Right.
So Manoj, can you elaborate a little bit more what you mean by VUAC climate?
Manoj, if you want to come online and talk to Beata live, please raise your hand and I shall unmute you. Okay. Yes, Manoj, please go ahead and ask a question.
Hi, Manoj.
It's with the change in the climate with lockdown and COVID, where things are very volatile, and where I mentioned VUCA is volatile, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So when you want to, like, as a product manager, if you want to have a product map of development with the current change happening very short sprint, how do you manage that expectations for your external stakeholders? For the product and enhancing your existing product. So even if you deliver an MVP, how do you actually evolve to the change in needs in a very volatile environment?
Yeah, so that's a great question then. I think whenever you have any interruption in your current road, right? Because actually everything that is happening around us can impact the work that you have currently on the roadmap or that you have currently in your sprint. It can affect the goals, objectives, or key results that you're trying to achieve. So I think one of I'm data driven, right? So the first question for me and the first task for me would be, can I get any data that is driving this change to understand, like, why is this change needed? Why is this change happening, especially if it's so sudden and unexpected? What do I know about this changing environment? And then, first of all, is anything that I'm doing right now on my roadmap related to those changes, or do I have to really stop building and delivering what I have on my plan and change the direction, right? I can give you one example of the company in Poland, actually, who changed their roadmap, and I think the focus immediately in the COVID times. It's an institute, scientific institute, Warsaw Genomics. They're doing the testing on human genomes to learn what is causing actually diseases, right? And then without hesitation, they actually changed everything that they were working on into helping people with and helping Poland with testing COVID, right? So if you know why you want to do that, and you know that you want to pivot on your entire roadmap and do completely different direction, Then, of course, as I said, you need to make sure you have a clear picture and understanding why you're doing that. Identify people you should talk to. It doesn't matter if it's internal or external stakeholder. But if you have this data and you have the right questions answered, why you want to do this need, and you can see and articulate clearly the benefits of this change, then you go to your stakeholders and communicate that to them clearly with all the information and hope for buying, right? I mean, we are all living in the same world, and it's not only my roadmap or your roadmap that is changing. There's a lot of stuff changing right now. And I think the situation is really that a lot of people understand that is happening, right? It doesn't mean that you have to change entire roadmap, maybe only part of this. Maybe you can adjust some changes and find like quick wins that you can deliver quicker. But it's still, everything depends on like if you want to really invest into that or should invest into this new changes, and then make sure that you have both your engineers, your development, and stakeholders on board. Does it answer your question, Manoj?
Yeah, thanks, Beata. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Manoj, for asking that great question. Now, let's move on to the next one. The next one is by Alok. How to make executive leadership team understand pivoting is the need of the hour. Since it may not align with vision or business strategy, what challenges have you faced in getting jobs done? Pivoting some feature, maybe just copying like stories on LinkedIn now. Your comments on that, Beata?
If you want to pivot on the strategy, and you, if I understood correctly, you're saying that you're not aligned with the vision. So that's a hard one, right? Because I think if we as product managers, if we are not convinced about our leadership vision, it's really a tough point, because that means that it may be really challenging for us to fulfill the strategy. Now, I think that if you really need to pivot on the strategy because you want to show them something that is different and maybe not quite aligned with the vision, what I would do, again, besides gathering data, I would answer the question to myself: is it really the change that is needed? And if it's not aligned with the strategy, like in 100 with the vision in 100%, should I do that? And if the answer is yes, then how can I convince the leaders that maybe changing a little bit the vision will be also beneficial for the business, right? So probably I will start with myself asking questions like why I want to do this change, how is this aligned with the vision, what are the points where I see this misalignment, what are the points that I should address more because they might trigger the discussion about the current vision and specific changes that I want to do. And then having those questions answered, I would come to my leaders and stakeholders and try to discuss this with them. That was a long question, so probably I didn't cover everything in this question. I will just...
I think you covered most of it. So, Alok, I hope that answers your question. And if you have any further, please comment in the Q&A section. The next question is from Nivedita. Collecting right data is the key. How do I ensure that the data is correct?
First of all, when you start collecting data, when you're building a solution or when you're validating the hypothesis, you need to define your metrics, and you need to also define your metrics of success. So it gives you already the information, part of the information, is this the data that I'm gathering, right? What kind of data I want to gather to make sure that the results of my hypothesis are going to show me the success, or what kind of a data I should gather to make sure that the feature that I'm launching is going to be successful. Is it related with engagement or acquisition, or are we building more technical solutions and it is about performance or stability? So if you define the metrics at the very beginning, and if you define what you want to gather when you're doing when you're building features, when you're delivering solutions, when you set the objectives and key results at the very beginning for your entire strategy, and you have also the KPIs defined on the company level, then if you scale that down and you go to the small goals, at the end of the line, you have like goals you need to achieve. And then you also put the metrics around the goals, like what tells me that I achieved the goal. So if you define everything that up front, then at the end, you know actually if this data showing you the success or you need to pivot on this, right? So define the data up front and make sure that you understand what it means for you to achieve the goal, what it means for you when you call the product success or the feature success. That will help you further.
Thank you for that question, Nivedita. Now here's a long question, Beata, from Rohit Nagpal. Rohit, if you're around, please come online and ask a question. Please raise your hand and I shall unmute you. Go ahead, Rohit, ask your question. You have to unmute, Rohit.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So this is about major strategy pivots, such as the one you undertook when you left your acting career. Say the product is not as successful and the feedback is not that great. However, as an individual or as a small startup, it is still not conclusive, as there are only a limited number of feedbacks that you can get. Maybe it's maybe the data that you have collected is still not a representative sample. So is there a scientific method to prove that pivoting is required? Reason I'm asking is that sometimes you have a gut feeling that this will work. Now this can go either way. I mean, if it is successful, the person will be called a visionary, but if not, I mean, person will be called a fool because they didn't look at the data. And everyone knows that timing and luck plays an important part in a startup getting successful. So I would love to know your comments on this. And also on the other part was, do you think that in your case, if you had taken a leap of faith and moved to maybe another country, or there was a bigger agency who advised struggling actors on the next steps, say, for example, again, moving to UK or Germany, maybe you could have been successful? And last comment is that, sorry for this long question, but I wanted to get your inputs on where to draw a line as far as pivots are concerned from major strategy changes.
Thank you, Rohit. That's a great question. It's a long one, but I like that, especially the second part. So let me start with the second part. You know, probably if you ask me the question today, and if I was like trying to be an actress, you know, like a year ago or 2 years ago, and for some reason I couldn't do that, the answer would be, yeah, if there is an opportunity, why not? Let's move to a different country. Maybe I can do that there. I'm talking about times like really, you know, over 20 years ago. I didn't consider that at that time. I even didn't consider, we had a completely different mind in Poland after communistic times. So I didn't consider that. And definitely today, that would be an option, right? So that would be like, what are my possibilities? How can I broaden the area of interest? How can I focus on maybe a different country and do that? Now, to your first part of the question, for me, it's really important to get as much data as you have to be able to get the pivot, to be able to do the pivot. Now, yes, and I fully agree with you that you cannot always go with the data. You have to use your gut feeling as well. And then, yes, if you are okay and if you succeed, you're called the visionary. If you fail, that's your product manager job. You failed, right? So maybe your gut feeling was not well. You're just saying that out loud and you're trying to do the different experiment. I think in a lot of situations, not only in startups, but in other bigger corporations, there's a lot of situation where we product managers make decisions based on gut feeling as well, right? They're not always right, but that's the life. And if we don't have enough data, and we know that we feel that we struggle to get enough data, and we feel that there must be something different. There must be something that that we should do differently. Let's do that, right? But make sure you're not doing that yourself. But before that, you also need to have a buy-in from your team and your leaders, right? You need to make sure that you know why you have a different gut feeling, right? Maybe the current amount of data is not enough because the offering, actually the solution, is not performing well, right? So make sure before you do this pivot based on your gut feeling, you still have the buy-in from your leaders and people who are responsible for the startup, for the company, and who are leading your product. So that's very, very important. But I would say, don't be afraid of using your gut feeling. If you only feel this is something that may be a win. Does it answer your question, Rohit?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Rohit. A gentle reminder to the audience, please go ahead and scan the QR code for a 30-minute coaching session or career counseling with our expert panel. And in view of the time constraints, Beata will take this one last question by Vijay. Prioritization challenges the pivot. What could be the steps to define strategy to counter this, and what would be the matrix to measure the defined strategy? It's an amazing closing question.
Yes, it is. Prioritization challenges the pivot. That is true. Prioritization challenges everything, right? I would say not only the pivot. I think that really what kind of metrics you want to gather depends on what kind of strategy and what kind of goals you want to set, right? Now, priorities are based on the current strategy, right? So you have a strategy to fulfill, so you need to set some priorities and goals to achieve to fulfill the strategy. Now, if you're thinking about pivoting the strategy, that also means that you're thinking about changing the priorities. So if you decide and can build the case why you want to change the strategy, that means you want to also change the focus and you want to change the priorities. If you decide to go for the new strategy, then you should define what are my new goals, what I would like to achieve within this new strategy, or maybe what I would like to achieve with this new part of the strategy, with this new hypothesis or with this new new feature. And then you're setting goals around that and the success metrics. So the question is like, would I want, maybe my goal is to decrease costs, right? My current solution is too expensive. Developing the solution, delivering, launching is too expensive. My goal is to reduce the cost. Now you have to set the metrics around like how much you want to reduce, how much you can reduce. So that would be your metric for the new goal. Or maybe you're saying, I want to change completely the technology I'm using right now to build the product, right? So you're also setting the goal around implementing the new technology and what goals I want to achieve when implementing this technology. Is it going to be more innovative? Is it going to be cheaper? Is it going to be more efficient for the product? And if yes, like what does it mean efficient? So really what kind of metrics you're setting depends on what kind of goals you're setting for this new strategy and what kind of pivot you're doing, right? Feature, platform, technology, customer segment, customer need, that will be really connected to this kind of pivot. So make sure you have new priorities for your new strategy and then communicate well to your leaders, like why old strategy and the old priorities should be changed. And then it's still challenging. As you see my pictures with Ross trying to put the couch up to the floor, it's challenging, but it's doable.
This was great, Beata. Thank you for your time. And audience, thank you for your participation. It indeed was a great session with all the interaction. And now coming to the most exciting and final part of the session, Beata, please help us pick the champion of curiosity who wins the digital course sponsored by the Institute for the best question asked tonight. I know it's a tough one, but you have to pick a winner for us.
Oh, I have to pick the winner?
Right. You can see the questions in the answered section. And also there was this question, the first question we took from chat as well.
So I would say the winner is Rohit Nagpal, because I loved his long question, and especially the one connected with my acting career. That is something that, as I said, if I could do that again, I would do, if not in Poland, then around the world. Thank you, Rohit, for this question. And if I can name the winner, that's the winner.
Thank you, Beata, and congratulations, Rohit, on winning the digital course again. And thank you for participating in all our webinars.
Thank you, everybody. That was a great pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
We have enjoyed having you with us, Beata. It's been a complete pleasure. Please accept this certificate of appreciation from the Institute. So if you scan the QR code or the certificate, it will take you to a dedicated Hall of Fame page that we have created for you with the recording of this video. Give it a few hours and it will be there. So please share it within your network, and we'll share the webinar recording on our YouTube channel as well. We are grateful for the time and effort you took to share your thoughts and amazing insights drawn from years of experience in the industry. And I'm certain that our audience will definitely benefit from the methods you suggested and get ahead in their career. Thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening and night. Thank you.
You too, Beata. Thank you, audience, for joining in. It was great interacting with you all. Do not forget to take that feedback form, which is in your chat box, and please let us know your experience with the webinars. And with that note, I end tonight's session. Happy learning and stay skilled. Have a great night.